Hello and welcome to Studio Wesley Cafe. I'm Sunine Buchanan and I'm your host. Welcome to our last current event segment of the semester. It's been such a fun semester. We have one more episode coming out after this episode, and it'll be our very last art club segment. So I really hope that you tune in for that as well. It was a really fun combo. I actually already recorded that one, so I can already recommend that it's going to be a really good last episode of the semester. But today I'm here with Allison, my co-host.
Hello.
Allison, how are you?
I'm good. I'm done for the semester, so I feel like a human being again, and it's phenomenal. This is like my favorite time. I love learning. I love that I went back to school. I'm excited for my degree in my future, but also I love this like end of the semester feeling.
It's so nothing beats that feeling of like,
Yeah.
and it's almost like kind of like maybe I need to look into that because like psychologically, because that feeling when you're like so stressed out and you're drowning and you're like having mental breakdowns and then finally you
Right.
like exit it. It's like there's just nothing better than that.
I mean, it's literally like a flip. Like go from like pure like everything sucks. I hate this. I want to drop out, and then you're like, "Oh wow, the sky is blue and it's beautiful." Like it's such a big flip.
Yeah, I know. Especially for like as a neurodivergent person, I'm like, because I do it to myself too. Like, I'll procrastinate something and get myself in the trenches. And then when I finish it, in the when I'm in the midst of it, I'm like, I'm never gonna finish this paper. It's the worst thing I've ever written. Da 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 da. And then I finish it, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's kind of fire right there. Like,
yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I literally just started some grad school applications, and like, obviously, it's like you're hearing me say I just started them. Yeah, you're correct. I did procrastinate them, but they're gonna get in, and it's gonna be fine.
Listen, I made the decision to go back to school. I applied to one singular school, and I made the decision to apply like a week before the applications were due. So I feel you.
Honestly, that makes me feel better because you have. I know you. You have a good work ethic, and this whole year I've just been like, there's that voice in the back of your head that's like, you need to start that. You need to start that now. You need to, and then finally I'm like, okay, I really do actually need to start that.
Yeah. But I think there's this like thing where there's more motivation like when you're fully ready, I think you do it. So I think that's why like it was like a week before and I was like, you know what, I'm ready. I'm going back to school, and I just did the thing. And I think like anytime before that, you're not into it, you're not ready. And if you're not into it already, it's not gonna go the way, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's
I took
honestly
2 years
such
off,
a good
so.
philosophy. It's true. It's really true. And it's like, if you don't get around to applying, then maybe it's just not your year. I do think it's so annoying that so many grad programs though only accept fall like acceptance into the fall semester, because it is so hard to make this all work during the Christmas time, like the holiday season, to be like cramming and trying to like write your essays and get your recommendations and stuff. I'm like, it's the holidays. I'm supposed to be on vacation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You're like, how am I supposed to enjoy this holiday season and also think about my future at the same time?
Yeah, right? I'm like,
Like,
I need this separate. This needs to be separate times. I
yeah,
can't do
like
both at once.
I don't need that like crisis right now. I just want to
Yeah.
enjoy Christmas.
I just want to eat Christmas cookies and watch my little rom-coms. Like,
Yes. Yes. All of the above.
oh my gosh. Well, thank you for being here with me
Yeah, I'm
and
excited. Thanks for
hosting.
having me.
Yeah, of course. I like that we did a little tradesies because I was on your show, you're on my show. And it's just like a
Yeah.
great little deal we have here. So it is Christmas time. And I'm like, I'm like in the depths of like buying Christmas gifts. It's the first year that I've ever had a budget specifically set aside for Christmas gifts. Usually I just like suffer and spend money that I don't have. But this year I was like, no, like it's in the budget. And then all of a sudden I'm having these crises because I'm like, what do I buy people now that I have money to buy people things? And I've been thinking so much, and there's been so much content online, I feel like this year, of like Christmas gift ideas and like that are supposed to be like unique and like, people don't want to buy this, but these are great gift ideas, or here's homemade, or on the flip side, I'm seeing people talk about like a no buy holiday and let's all try and get crafty and make all our holiday gifts. And I've just been like in the depths, and I was like thinking about, I'm like, what are your favorite Christmas gifts? Like, What do you like to get? What don't you like to get around Christmas? What do you like to give? Like, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I actually loved that this was on your list of topics because I am not typically a commercial Christmas person. So I love giving gifts, but I almost every single year make them all. So that's what you were like talking about, that no buy
Aw.
Christmas, which I don't really know if it's a no buy because you still got to buy all the supplies and make all the things.
True, true.
And that's typically what I do. And I feel like everyone gets more value out of it. However, I will say last year and this year that did not happen because I am a grad school student. And so that was like not a thing. So this year I actually finished my shopping on Monday. I was very excited. The
Oh
only
my
thing I
gosh, you're
haven't
so on
gotten is
top of
wrapping.
it.
I was so excited. But I turned to Etsy currently because then it's like
Mm,
homemade, but homemade by other people.
that is so smart.
Yeah, I'm like, if I can't home make it, I'll have other people home make it. And then it's still, and I also, so anyway, all of this to say, I'm very big on like sentimental gifts. And so, like,
Mm.
I'm a person where, like, with birthdays, I get things people want. But, like, for Christmases, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all the things, I tend to do like things that are sentimental, things that have meaning to them. Like, there's, I'm trying, my brain is blanking on any example of sentimental gifts at this moment in time. But wow, I'm like, what presents have I gotten people in the last few years? And
I
I
don't know,
can't
maybe
even.
like photos or like, those little homemade things you can get with your names engraved on. I'm trying to think of
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm just like fully blank. So yeah, so just sentimental things. So like last year, my mom, because I did Etsy and obviously I couldn't make it. I got her like one of those like kids' name engraved necklaces,
mm,
things like that. 1 year I made my grandma these like little light things where like you kind of you make frames and put pictures around them, put a tea light in the center. So like it's one of the things I've made. So like all things that are like sentimental because it had her grandkids all throughout it, and so big sentimental person. I just feel like there's so much that gets lost in like commercial Christmas, and nothing against it. Like if you love a good commercial Christmas, you love a good commercial Christmas. That's totally fine with me. But like in like my heart, I like the value of like sentimental stuff.
yeah. It
Yeah.
honestly is one of those times of years that make you really reflect on the ways that you like spend money and like
Hmm.
I don't know, it can be so first of all, it can be so overwhelming. Like I feel like I'm being brainwashed this whole
Yeah.
season of like buy this, you need this, everyone needs this. And it can be very like, what do I need? What do these people need? Um, but I like it's funny because my family growing up didn't do it's not that we didn't get Christmas gifts, but it wasn't like a big deal. Like usually we got like
Hmm.
one thing or like two little things or like we never we were poor growing up, so like quite frankly. So we never got a lot of gifts. Um and I don't remember ever hating that. I mean, as a kid, I was just
Right.
grateful for what I got and it was just time to hang out with family
Hmm.
and my dad is like a huge practical gift giver. Like to this day, he'll give me like Walmart gift cards or like
Hmm.
just like the most random practical things that like he's like, "You need." He's like, "I like practical." "I don't like spending money on practical stuff, so I know that, you'll want this." And honestly, as I get older, I'm like, "That's so true." Like, I really do just want a little discount on my groceries this month, and, like, I'll be grateful. Um, and then there's, like, on the flip side, I love, like, sentimental gifts, but I
Hmm.
also am one of those people that hates clutter. Like, I'm not a huge knickknack person. And
Okay.
now I love knickknack people. Like I love going to somebody's house and looking at all their knickknacks. But me, I'm like, I can't have too many knickknacks. Like I can't have things sitting on my table or whatever. It drives me crazy. So I
Hmm.
like ride that line of like loving sentimental stuff, but like it has to be something for me that has some kind of like practical use. You know what I mean? Something
Yeah.
that like will have like an actual place to go.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's rough out here. Um, it's rough out here.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board for practical gifts too. Like those, I feel like are so, especially like you said, as we're getting older, like practical gifts are phenomenal. Like I remember when I moved out of Fort Dub, so like when we were both in CCW and we lived in CCW housing, I can't just say Fort Dub, I guess, and not everybody knows what that is. Ministry housing, into like a condo with a one roommate. Big first, like big girl step there. For Christmas that year, my parents got me a toolbox. Like, and it was the greatest thing ever because I was like, I'm moving into a condo and I have all this stuff to do that I didn't have to do before, and so it like really. It was so good, and I still use it. I still have it. I use it all the time, and it was probably one of the most practical gifts anyone's ever given me, and it's phenomenal. I love it.
Yeah, like those kinds of things. I was literally sitting in my living room the other day looking around, and I was looking at like, well, because I made a joke where I was like, "Oh, I'm such an adult. Like, I've bought all this stuff in here." And then I actually started looking and seeing what things in my living room I bought, and I was like, "Actually, I haven't hardly bought any of this." Like, most of it is just like gifts that, like, my rug in my living room was like Austin, my husband's mom had like a rooms to go like credit that she gifted us. Um, and for like our anniversary, and so we got like a free rug, and that's like, I'm gonna have that rug
That's
for years
incredible.
and years, right? The
Yeah.
toolbox, our toolbox too, was a gift. Like, Austin's parents got him that for one Christmas,
Yeah.
and we use that thing every week. We're doing something where we need one of those tools. um or like, yeah, I think I really like those gifts, and I think that's a good philosophy for buying gifts, is like, regardless of if it's sentimental, practical, or what, like, what kind of gifts can we get that we either know the person will use and not
Hmm.
waste, or um use for the long term, like something that they can keep for like a long time.
Yeah.
um yeah, I've also been seeing some cute like gift ideas online for like practical kitchen stuff that you can get, like buying people cute little bottles of like olive oil, or
Hmm.
just like those expensive kitchen supplies that you like don't want to buy when you go grocery shopping, that but like you'll need. And I was like, honestly,
Yeah.
that's so smart.
And even too, people take it like one step further and they like make the infused olive oil. Or like one year I made vanilla for everybody because vanilla is expensive. Something I didn't know as a child. It's expensive. And
Vanilla
like,
actually is so expensive.
yeah, a bottle of vodka and some vanilla bean and let it sit for like 3 months and you have vanilla that you can use in baking. Like, it's so easy. And so I did that one year, and like it seemed so practical, but also it was such a cool little like project that required little to no attention from me at all. Like it was so good.
Yeah. Yeah, but it'll be fun. It, gifts this year I think is going to be fun. I think I'm going to, which I don't want to spoil anyone's gift. So
I almost did
I
that
don't
earlier. I almost said
I was
one when I was trying to name things, and I was like, no, I can't say that on here.
I'm like, I don't know if I don't think it was you, but I have all these, like, because I used to work at a bakery. I just like stopped that job, and I have all these leftover doughs in my freezer from like there actually were like scraps from Pop Tart dough. Anyway, so one of my plans this year is to like sit down and like make some hand pies to like bake
Ooh.
off and like hand out to everyone. Because I'm like, that'll be something that I know won't go to waste. But I'm like, what flavor like, what's a universal flavor that everyone would like in hand pie? Because of course I am like, I want to do something like crazy. I'm like, maybe I should do like a pistachio or like a chocolate raspberry. And I'm like, maybe I should just do apple. You know what I mean? But I feel like food is always another really, I'm always grateful for food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually like a tradition in my family is growing up my entire childhood and even now as like an adult, I went around with my parents this year too. My mom and me, depending on where I was at and how old I was, but have always baked and made baskets for the neighbors of like baked goods and stuff. So like that way, we like are, making connections with our neighbors, but also like it's food. Everybody loves food. And we've always done like baked goods and stuff and handed it out to people close to us. And I did it when I was living on my own too, like for people at work and friends at work and stuff. And so I love it. I love it. I've seen, speaking of like influencers and Christmas stuff, is I don't know the name of the account. And I wish I did, but I'm following an account right now. And I started following her because she was like, she's doing practical Christmas stuff. I don't know if that's the word she used, but it's she's making stuff you can eat. Like that's her whole thing. And she's like, let's give out Christmas gifts this year that don't require buying a bunch of like, you have a lot of stuff to bake in your house already. It's like,
Mhm.
and people will eat it and it won't go to waste and it won't like be something that sits on a shelf and nobody uses. And I love it. I've been watching her videos and they're phenomenal.
Yeah, food is always a win. And honestly, it actually reminds me of well, okay, so this week, I had a little tragedy with my Austin and I's red Prius.
Oh no.
Um I hit like a I hit a storm drain, and it was really dramatic because the tire popped, and then I accidentally honked horn, and then there was like an ambulance on the street. It was like a very like picture the most like dramatic way that you could hit a curb, and that's what happened to me. And
Oh no.
anyways, we needed proof for the insurance company because the insurance company was like, I don't know, like, are you sure you did it on this day? Like, they thought we were being sketchy. And so I literally had to put letters in all of my neighbors' doors being like, hey, can you give us your ring camera footage? And so I was like, I'll bake you Christmas cookies. Finally, one of our neighbors sent us some ring camera footage of me getting into this embarrassing accident. And then so now it's like, alongside baking my hand pies, I do have to make some Christmas cookies for my neighbors.
What a solid neighbor though to like to give you that footage because that's a mess. Ugh, insurance
Oh
companies
my
are so
gosh,
worth
I
it.
know. They were so I was like, these people are so kind. I was
Yeah.
very grateful. I was very, and I don't personally ever want like a camera like that at my house, but I'm like, I'm glad I at least have one neighbor that does, because I'm like, we at least need one person keeping track of what's
Right.
happening here. What a mess. Oh my
They've
gosh.
got it. They've got the
So
whole neighborhood now.
yeah, right. They do. And the funny thing is, in the text, they mentioned that they've had to do this before. They're like, oh, the last time we had to send footage to a neighbor. And I was like, oh, this has happened before, hasn't it? Um, so yes, the holiday
That's
season,
funny.
it's a time for
'Tis the
generosity, I
season.
guess.
There we go. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. So to transition us a little bit, another thing I've been seeing a lot online, I feel like a lot of the topics today are things that I've been observing on my TikTok specifically. I'm not going to lie to you. I love TikTok. I watch too much TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
Um, yes. See, the thing, I have a complicated relationship with words. I have a complicated relationship with TikTok right now, in the sense that I am like super paranoid about checking notifications. I check notifications immediately, except on TikTok. So I'm having
Mm.
this problem where I cannot open TikTok right now because I've got like 300 DMs that I have not dealt with. And so I've been scrolling Instagram reels instead, but it's basically the same thing. It's just I do love TikTok, but I open it and it's like 99 plus notifications and I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want to look at those right now.
Yeah.
Um,
That's so funny. I like don't even I usually am like that, but I forget that people can DM me on TikTok. Like I hardly ever watch the one
mhm.
things people send me unless it's like they tell me specifically like, Sydney, I just sent you something
Well, and
really important.
yeah, and I think that's part of it is like I'm so used to that like mindless scroll on TikTok that my brain doesn't go, oh, check your DMs.
Mhm.
And so it just got out of control. And so now I see it every time I log in, I see it. And now I'm getting emails about people DMing me. Like TikTok is like, please check your,
Email.
yeah, I'll get like an email now that's like, you have all of these DMs. And I'm like, please stop. Like,
I like forget how much information I give to my apps. And honestly, it's a problem. Austin's yelling at me all the time because he'll be watching me scroll on my phone, and then he'll see some pop up come up on my phone, and I'll just like, I hardly ever. This is so embarrassing to me. Sometimes I just don't even read them. I'm just like, yeah, okay. I'm like, okay, or allow. I just like want it to go away, so I just like agree to whatever it is asking me. And Austin's like, Sydney, you can't do that anymore. You really need to read what your phone is asking you. And I'm like, it was
that's
in
so
the way of
funny.
the video I was watching. Anyways, so on TikTok, there's all this I've been noticing, at least lately, in uptick or like a surge in content that's like nostalgia content.
Hmm.
Specifically, I think maybe I'm noticing it more because it's like my generation stuff. So
Yeah.
all these old Disney stars from shows like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Wizards of Waverly Place. I'm trying to think of another one. Ned's Declassified have started these like tell all podcasts about the
Yeah.
shows that they were on and stuff. And I find some of them interesting, and then some of them I'm like, why are we talking about this? Like, I do not care about this, but it just made me think about how, like, this has been going on for a while. I think that this has been going on for years, because I think about back whenever the Full House reboot happened, the Fuller
Mhm.
House, like, there was also a surge then of like these kind of older TV shows rebooting, and but I didn't really care about that stuff. And now seeing like my generation stuff like get rebooted, or these podcasts, I mean, it's just made me think a lot about nostalgia content as a concept, because we
Yeah.
see it, I think, in so many different ways. In a way, we see it with the re-releases of Taylor Swift's albums, even
Mhm.
though that has a whole separate like purpose. It also is like, it just makes us all nostalgic for like, oh my gosh, when I was listening to this album. Or we see it with like um just everywhere we're seeing
Yeah.
this. We see,
Yeah.
we see it with like live action Disney movies, like when they
Mhm.
started
That was, like, on
re-releasing
my
The
list of
Lion
things, yeah.
King. So what are your thoughts about this? Do you like nostalgic content? Do you like some of it, hate some of it?
Gosh, it is honestly so hit or miss. Like, I feel like sometimes I see something and I'm like, this is so, like, for example, I am a huge Gilmore Girls person. Like, I watched it in high school, and it is one of my favorite things in the whole world. It's a comfort show. Do you know that Scott Patterson, the man who plays Luke Danes, has a podcast about it? Like,
No.
it's called I Am All In, and he's going through and he watches every single episode with, like, either, like, costume department or actual actors from the show or makeup or, like,
Oh
just,
my
like, behind the scenes
god.
people, and he, like, reacts to it, and it's phenomenal. It's so good. But then there are just, like, others that I listen to, like, podcast-wise or even, like, reboots of TV shows where I'm just like, "That just was disappointing and not what I was looking for." So I feel like it's so hit or miss, with how I feel about them. Like, for example, it's interesting you brought up Full House because I actually was a Full House kid. And I don't know
Mm.
if it's just that, like, I was watching it at a time like past its like date, like or what, but I
Mhm.
loved Full House when I was younger. Um, very disappointed by Fuller House. Like, I was not a fan.
Yeah, I didn't
Also,
like it either.
right. Also, I just want to name that my niece made me feel incredibly old with Fuller House, and that just was a whole thing in itself too. I would like, we were talking about like TV shows we watched when we were younger, and I was like, "Oh, I used to love Full House," and she was like, "It's called Fuller House, Aunt Al," and I was like, "No, it is not." I was like,
You're
"Hold
like,
on,
"Oh my
back up."
gosh."
But yeah, like that was like the first moment I think she ever made me feel old, and I was like, "Oh no." Um, but yeah, so I think it's just very hit or miss. It's just a whole thing, and I love all of the re-releases of Taylor Swift's music and that whole nostalgia feel of it. And like you said, there's a whole nother reason she's doing it, but also like she is also making a ton of money off of it right
A
now, and that's
ton
like
of
a thing
money.
to name too.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like her 1989 released, I bought one of the records, but if you buy a 4 set that have all the same songs on them, it spells 1989. But like you have to buy each one individually, so that's like
That's
it's
a lot of money. Oh
it
my
is a lot,
god.
especially because her records are like $60 a record.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's very hit or miss. I have like a lot of different thoughts and feelings towards like different areas, like podcasts and movies and shows and all the things.
Yeah, I completely agree, because some of it, I feel like it's almost like a matter of like, if they're bringing something actually fresh to the
Mhm.
that particular story or the characters, or if it's just they're literally just trying to invoke nostalgia. And I feel like a perfect example that is the Lion King reboot versus the Jungle Book reboot. I don't know if you ever watched the Jungle Book one.
Mhm. Yeah.
I didn't particularly like the Lion King one. I mean, it was literally just shot for shot the animated series, except for a different form of animation where the animals looked more real. And of course, they had like a lot. They had all these big singers on there, like Beyonce and like whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but they didn't bring anything fresh to the characters. Like, it was the same story. But the Jungle Book reboot, I actually really liked, because the story was like a little different. It had a different ending, and um it was like there were some parts of the story that were the same, but there were also some parts of the story that were very different. And I felt like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, like this is bringing a fresh like perspective kind of this story. And it was like, yeah, just a different form of animation, but they did have like the live actor kid. They had like an actual kid playing
Mm-hmm.
the Getting Jungle Book. And so I feel like that was a great example. And then it's like the same thing with those podcasts. Like some of them I hear and I'm like, you're literally just like talking about the like gossip of when you were like a high school actor. And something about that makes
Yes.
me uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't actually want to hear like the Ned's Declassified one. I don't know if you remember that show.
So
It
I
makes me
almost I was
oh,
trying
wait,
not to interrupt you and be like, "Can we? Is this the Ned's Declassified that we're talking about right now?" Because I knew that's where it was going.
some of
Yeah,
them
that
are so like I'm like I like and not to be crude, but they'll talk about like the like sex scandals of like the show and stuff. And I'm
yes.
like, I don't want to hear about high schoolers. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't care. Y'all were literally children, and I don't really want to hear about the things you were doing
Right.
as children. It's a very bizarre to me. And I kind of was like, this is like distasteful. Like, this is not bringing anything to like this like fun
Mhm.
story that we all like enjoyed or whatever. Um, I don't know. And it's like a fine line, right? Because there's some, like the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody one. I can't remember. So the girl that hosts that particular podcast, I actually can't remember what show she was from, but she was interviewing the mom from Sweet Life of Zach and Cody,
Mhm.
who like hasn't really done much since. I can't remember
Yeah,
the actress's name.
I can't either.
And the actress is like telling stories about like, you know, Zach and Cody and like how basically like Cody was like body shamed on the set all the time and stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, this is like an important topic, but something about the way you're talking about it makes me feel like you want like clout for like sharing all this
Yeah.
stuff versus like maybe that's like not your story to tell. Like maybe that's there as the child actors on the set. Maybe that's like their stories to tell, right?
Right.
Versus like I don't know if you've seen some of the podcasts that Allison Stoner has done where
Mhm.
she's talked about she's one of the people who was on Camp Rock.
Yes, yeah.
And she's been doing kind of like a full breakdown of like the exploitation of children in Hollywood and stuff. And that stuff, I'm like, okay, this is really important. Like she's
Mhm.
getting into it, she's telling her own stories, she's exposing kind of like the industry. And so it really is this fine line for me between like if they're bringing something new, if they're talking about something important, or if they're just like wanting us to give them money because we used to love those characters as kids, you know?
Yeah, and it's I mean, it is like you said, like, what's the why behind it? Why are they doing it? And like, it was so funny because as soon as you started talking about it, I knew which podcast you were gonna bring up. Because that one too, I was so excited for that when I first heard about it. And the more clips that pop up on my like For You page as I'm scrolling, the more I'm like, this is not what I expected it to be. Which
Mm-mm.
then is like disappointing to begin with because you're like,
Yeah.
nostalgia. I loved this show, and then you're like, oh, no, thank you. Um, but yeah, it definitely is like the why behind it. I think is a big part of like how I like it because it is. I will say, while I do also strive for not strive, like want that change that kind of makes it different. I did love the Lion King reboot, but that's mostly
Mhm.
because the Lion King was my favorite like non-princess Disney movie. So that was
Yeah.
full nostalgia for me. I cried the whole time in the theater because I knew I was going to watch Mufasa die as a real lion. Like my best friend was with me, and afterwards she was like,
Preemptively
"I didn't know."
crying. Oh my gosh.
She was like, "I didn't know what to do for you," and I was like, "There was nothing you could have done." um,
Like, shh.
Yeah, but then again, I do love it when they add more. So like you said with the Jungle Book was phenomenal. It was so good. Probably one of my favorite like live actions that they've done. Or even
Mhm.
if they just add a few things, like the new Beauty and the Beast has like new songs in it. And so like there's something
Mhm.
about it that's a little different. But when it is cut and paste, it's kind of like, did we need it? Like, was it
Yeah.
necessary? Or even like Toy Story 4. Like they
Yeah.
ended Toy Story, they gave it a whole ending and then they brought it back. And on one hand, it was like that nostalgia of like, oh my God, another Toy Story. This is a movie from my childhood. But then it's also like, we didn't really need it though. But it is a whole other storyline. So it's like that weird mixture of like, we did get another story, but we didn't need another story because like Andy gave his toys to Bonnie and everybody was happy. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
So it is very, like I said, I mean, I've already said this, but it's so hit or miss on like where I stand with these certain things. Yeah, I just thought the Lion King thing was funny because I was like, man, I love that one.
Yeah. No, and like there's no hate. I of course love the music in it. And so I'm not mad at the things we got from that, but
Yeah,
it was just an example for me. I was like, this is like shot for shot.
yeah,
Um
it is an
yeah.
exact copy, but animals.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting time. And I think that for me it's like I don't really care. I mean, that's always been happening. I mean, people have always
Right.
had loved nostalgia. People have always basked in their glory days as artists. That's not new. I think it feels kind of new because online creators have so much more freedom as to what they're saying about their stuff now. Because of platforms like TikTok and
Mhm.
these platforms where people can get on, get a millions and millions of followers and say whatever they want. That's, so there I think there's a reason we're seeing it's becoming visible, I guess.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I just like sometimes worry that like we are like allowing art to get a little lazy and like not innovative or not even really say anything important, just because like we want so badly like these like feelings of nostalgia that like we're being exploited for it, I guess. At a certain
Mhm.
point I'm like they're just making this stuff because of money. And I mean that they've always done that. Again, they always make a part 2 to a movie. They always make a if there's a movie that makes a lot of money, they're going to make a number 2 because
Right,
they'll make a lot
right.
of money again even if it's a bad movie. And so it's just like these money making schemes I feel like are kind of killing art a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think too, it like ties into that. I don't think people fully remember or make the connection that like this is art. Like
Yes.
somebody spent their entire childhood drawing and videoing and painting and doing some sort of digital art to become someone who works in CGI. Like it is an art
Yeah.
form to do all of this. And I think that like that gets lost in all of it because we are so like, I want my show. I want the next season. I want to keep watching it. It's such a good show. But I think we lose that like somebody is putting like all of what they have into this. Um, and so I think that's just part of it too, is like that piece does get lost, like you said.
Mhm.
And so we get so focused on like wanting that remake or wanting that reboot, and we forget that like what those people before probably went through to put like their all into it to create these shows and these things.
Mm.
But I mean, but then again, too, like I meant to comment on this and I totally forgot, but you were talking about like Allison Stoner. Like, I think
Mhm.
the way she uses her platform to like actually talk about these really big issues that are happening in media, media is not the right word. In is it the right word?
Hollywood media. Yeah.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's taking like her art form and she's using it for better, which I think is
Yeah.
so it's phenomenal that she has, because people know who know who she is, and she's using it for good, and I think that's just such a good. I don't know the right word here. It's I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's
Yeah.
good. It's great.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And I feel like I had something to say, but I got so immersed in what you were saying that I totally forgot. But yeah. Yeah, it's a big topic. There's so much like I was going to say. And this actually is a conversation I get into a little bit in the next episode of Cafe with the interns, but how a lot of times the content we see emerging is like a reflection of obviously whatever's going in our society.
Hmm.
And I think right now we see so much social and political unrest, and we're in a recession, and no one can afford their rent, people can't afford their groceries, people are struggling. And so no wonder people are going to art and content for comfort. People want to be comforted by what they're watching because
Yeah.
it can feel very overwhelming to be a human right now. Not just an American, like specifically America is like there's a lot going on right now politically,
Mhm.
socially, economically. And so I also think that all this content being made is also in addition to being a money making scheme also is serving a purpose of like it's nice to be able to just go back and hear
Mhm.
some of your favorite childhood stars talk about their experience making that show that you loved. It's
Yeah.
comforting and it makes you maybe think back to a time where you felt more safe or stable as a kid. Like there's so many reasons why we engage with this kind of content. So I definitely don't think it's like a cut and dry like if you like this stuff, you have bad taste, or if you,
Right.
it's like there's so many reasons as to why we engage with it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I absolutely agree because I don't know how many times I've been in, like, a high state of stress and have been and just I'm like, "I'm gonna turn on Ariel. I'm gonna watch The Little Mermaid," and it, like
Oh,
and it calms me, you know? Or even, like, with Gilmore Girls, like, I love listening to Scott Patterson's podcast, like, when I'm stressed because it, like, calms me to hear him talking about the show that I loved so much and have such a connection to, and so I definitely see that. It's definitely a spectrum of, like, the different things that are coming out of it, the reasons why we're doing it, the all the things. And I am a big fan of nostalgia content, but it just like you said depends on the why. It depends on what I need at the time. I think is a big factor too. Like if I just want to feel a little nostalgia, then I probably will watch Lion King, even though I know it's just a moneymaker movie and it's cut and paste.
yeah.
You know, if I want to relive my childhood, but like more from the adult stance, I might watch the new iCarly reboot because I actually really like
Yeah.
that one. And
I heard
that's like
that one was good. I haven't watched it, but I heard it's good.
it's like iCarly, but adult. Like, I mean, it's vulgar. It's even like a little tad bit spicy. So it's like, I might watch that because it's like reliving my
Yeah.
childhood, but like as an adult. So it's so
Yeah.
good. So it's definitely a spectrum of things.
Yeah. Definitely. Um, so I guess transitioning a little bit, but on the topic of like things going on in society and the way media reflects that. Um, I've been seeing so much discourse, and I don't know again what side of the internet you're on. The side of the internet I'm on, I love internet drama and discourse. Like it finds me, okay? I don't seek it out. It finds me. And there's all kinds of debates on the internet right now around the concept of social media influencers
Hmm.
and what we should expect from them when it comes to speaking and educating on social issues.
Hmm.
I think this has been a debate for a long time. I think ever since the emergence of cancel culture, we kind of started to think, okay, well, like these public figures we want to hold to a higher standard. If you have a platform, we're going to hold you to a higher standard. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. Obviously, there are times where cancel culture gets wild and it gets very like mob mentality. And it's like, all right, well, like we have to hold that intention. And we also have to hold it intention with letting people have a redemption arc, right? Letting people sometimes redeem themselves. But with that, I feel like came this like really this thing we've struggled with for a long time of like these young people we love on TikTok, on Instagram. We love following these young people who lives we're interested in because maybe they live in California or New York and I don't ever want to live in New York, but I love watching a good vlog of somebody who does live in New York, or these
Right.
people dress in a way we like, or they are interior decorators and we love their ideas, or they're comedians. Like they're literally TikTok comedians and they just get on their phone and tell funny jokes. And then all of a sudden, we ask them about something that's going on in the world that we're like, what do you think about this? And some people choose to comment on these issues and some people don't. Some people get in trouble because they comment on these issues and they say something uneducated. Sometimes people get in trouble because they don't say something and people really want them to. I was curious if you've thought about this and like what kinds of creators like if you've seen this discourse, if you have an opinion on like who you think should be talking about what, um, or if you have any examples of people that you're like, this is a good way to go about this. This is not. I was curious.
Yeah, and my voice is going. I think I've thought a lot about this to like prepare for this. I think there's so many pieces here, right? Like in my head, and I'm a very big like proponent of like until you're in that situation, you don't actually know how you'd react. And so like going into that, I'm going to say like in my head, I feel like if I had that following that like systemic change is something I'd want to talk about. I'd want to talk about what's going on in the world. I'd want to put it out there. I'd want to do my research and make sure people know what's going on. Um, but I also think it's hard to have that expectation on people who are, like you said, home influencers. Like if someone's whole account is that they're doing DIY, while yes, they have a following, and in my brain, it should always be used for the best thing that it can be used for. And if that is talking about those like bigger issues that are happening, that's great. But also, like, it's not their everyday life, you know? And then we do get into that like aspect of cancel culture. And so should we expect them to try to jump into those kinds of issues and those kind of conversations knowing that like they've never done it before and there's a chance that they might misspeak or say something that they don't mean or say it the wrong way and all of a sudden their whole platform is destroyed. And so there's like I feel like there's so many ends to this to where like morally like using your platforms for the good is a huge thing, but it's I don't know. It's like a why wouldn't you use it, but also why should we expect you to if it's something you've never done before? So like I'm a social
Mhm.
work major, so I feel like that makes sense if I'm going to talk if I have a big platform, it makes sense for me to talk about these things. But again, like going back to like home DIY, like it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's kind of there's so many pieces, so many aspects, and I don't even know like where to start or how to like fully get into the thought that I'm trying to form.
No, yeah, and you're so right. I think I relate in that I think I see both arguments and like everything. I think there's so much nuance because I think it maybe depends on the creator, how that particular creator or influencer has positioned themselves, what
Mhm.
things they've talked about before. Um, I think that I think I worry sometimes about as somebody who studied a social science
Mhm.
and loves the scientific method, like I'm obsessed with it. I worry sometimes about people's literacy and understanding reputable sources.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if we're asking random white girls in New York to be giving us these nuanced geopolitical takes, we
Mhm.
are not looking to good sources, right? We need better sourcing for information.
Yeah.
And that's important to me. Like, I think that it is really important that young people are learning how to seek out good, reputable sources, have a good critical lens when reading articles, when reading stuff, um,
Mhm.
journalism. And so I do worry about that sometimes. I'm like, what are we expecting of them? Are
Yeah.
we really expecting them to educate or, even give these like updated like reports on what's going on because those aren't the people for that. I think I do understand on the flip side wanting to support and uplift people who align with your values. And I think that's where I'm like, I understand that. I understand why so many young people want the people that they support online who maybe they even have a parasocial relationship with of somebody that they like and they think that they would be friends with if they knew in real life to represent them, especially when we all live under a government that so often does not represent our wants. It sometimes can feel hopeless and it's like, well, can my media influencers at least represent what I'm thinking? And so
Yeah.
in that instance, I understand. Like, for example, specifically Brittany Broski, who I have been like a long-term supporter of. I have loved Brittany Broski. And I'm not saying yet that I don't like I have no hard take on whether I'm going to support her or not in the future. A lot of her followers want her to talk about the Israel Palestine and Israel Hamas like issue.
Mhm.
And she kind of made these snarky comments of like, why would you expect me to talk about that? Like, I'm not the person.
Mm.
And people keep referring to a literal episode of her own podcast where she's like, as a person with a platform, I have to use my platform to talk about important things. I have to use my platform to talk about what matters. And of course, she has talked about other really, she's talked about women's rights issues and Roe v. Wade. She was really vocal about when that got overturned. She's really vocal about Black Lives Matter stuff. She's really vocal about trans rights. And so it feels very like, okay, you've been very political and now all of a sudden you don't want to be political and you're going to have to like come to terms with the fact that you aligned yourself with having a semi-political platform and people want to know what you think. So it's an interesting time. People are really upset with her. And I'm kind of like, I get it, because I don't think I was, at least me personally, I was not versed in global political affairs until very recently. I kind of stayed out of
Mhm.
that stuff. And so
Yeah.
I think I relate. And I think I'm glad I'm not on a platform like that, because I don't know what I would
Yes.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's this piece of like I mean specifically like with the Israel Palestine stuff, I think at the beginning when that started showing up everywhere, I think, like you said, finding sources that are giving the true information, I think was the hardest at the very beginning. Understanding what was truly happening over there was the hardest at the very beginning. And so I think so many people were trying to speak about it and it wasn't going the way it needed to, because everybody was still trying to get a grasp on what was going on. Um, and so I think there is something special about the way that we live in social media currently, um, to which it could be super helpful when it comes to this kind of stuff. But like you said, if it's not a credible source, then it does the exact opposite. Like, why, like you said, why should we expect this random white woman in New York to tell us about these affairs going on overseas when she's got no political background, no social background? You know, maybe she just has like a business degree. Like, what does that have to do with her life? And why should we expect her to be able to like formulate those thoughts accurately and expect that the information is accurate? And it goes into that like, are people trusting every single thing they see on social media, or are they seeing a video and going and researching afterwards? That's like a thing I do.
Yeah.
I'm a very big like, I don't trust things I see on the internet, so I'll see a video, and I did this as soon as like all of this Israel stuff started happening. Is I like saw a video and I was like, I'm gonna go research this some more and try to figure out
Yeah.
like what's going on. But not everybody does that, and so I think
Mhm.
we live in this space that could be so useful for this stuff, but it also could be so harmful for this stuff.
Mhm.
And I think it's so hard to find that balance of like who should be reporting on it, who should be talking
Mhm.
about it. Um, how do we know that that person who's talking about it has actually done their research and is
Mhm.
reporting actual information to us? Um, how do we find the people who are brave enough to report that information, knowing
Yeah.
that people online will bully them relentlessly for it?
Yes, and it
Like
doesn't matter
there,
what, particular political opinion you have, you're gonna get
yeah,
somebody's gonna be mad.
yeah, I mean, even like, I love it when celebrities and influencers talk about voting, but even that leads to like ridicule online, you know? Well, whose side are you on? Who are you voting for? How
Mhm.
could you vote for them when all they're doing is trying to get more people to vote? Like,
Yeah.
it's so hard, I think, to be an influencer today and to talk about that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
not knowing how the internet is going to react to you.
Yeah.
But again, like I've kind of said, like I think having that platform and being able to do that is really important. But I also understand why you wouldn't want to, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's something we'll have to, I guess, at some point come to terms with, or a more understanding of our expectations. And I think right now, at least, and I reserve the right to change and grow my mind, of course, but I think I
Right.
feel like I at least want influencers and people who are making money off of having our attention to at least have the critical thinking and the education to be able to point people in good directions.
Mhm.
One person that I follow and have followed for a long time, her name's Madeline Pendleton. She owns the clothing brand Tunnel Vision, and her content's not for everyone because she does a lot of like she talks a lot about like socialist economics, and so if you're not into that stuff, then like you won't find her interesting. Well, maybe you will, because she's very educated on it. But
Mhm.
um she has had some really good videos on um just this topic specifically, because she's like, one is very objectively educated on stuff, but also is like, but also I'm not the person you need to be looking to for this information. Like, here's my opinion, but here's the sources that I'm going to educate myself. She's constantly posting podcasts. She's constantly posting books. She's constantly
Mhm.
referring people to like academic articles. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm like, yes, if you're going to be
Yeah.
having political opinions or talking about social issues, you need to be ready to be referring people to your sources, at least your own sources, if not recommending sources for people to use. Um, because I'm like, if you're not going to educate, at least help young people educate themselves. Um, I think that's so important, and it's like,
Yeah.
and it's easy to get online and believe whatever you see, but it's just not, we can't do that anymore, especially with what we know about propaganda on the internet. Like, we have to be
Mhm.
constantly checking ourselves,
Yeah.
educating ourselves. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and throughout this whole like conversation on specifically this last part about influencers and all of the things going on in the world today, I've been trying to formulate that thought of like what is the right way to do it, and I think that's it. Not just giving your opinion, but sharing things that are educational for everyone around you. Yeah, I love that, and I don't see that on my pages. So we might be on different sides, or I just haven't stumbled across her account yet. But I think that's a beautiful thing, like giving information, researched information. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. um yeah, I feel like I could talk about this forever, but
Yeah. Same.
yeah. Well, I'm just gonna wrap it up here. I think that was a really good conversation. Thank you for joining me and
Yeah.
co-hosting with me today.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and thanks to all who have stuck around to the end of this episode. Um Tune in, I guess in 2 weeks for our last episode of this semester, and continue to engage with our Instagram. What's our Instagram handle?
Studio.Wesley.
Studio.Wesley.
Oh,
Get on
actually,
our
I don't know.
Instagram.
That might be the Linktree handle. Now that you said that, I'm like, oh, is that the
Wait,
right
hold on,
one?
hold on, hold on. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I feel like I need to start actually saying our, because I always say engage with our Instagram and then I forget our Instagram handle.
I
Studio.
just, it actually
No,
just might
you're
be
right.
Studio Wesley.
Studio.Wesley.
It is Studio.Wesley.
You're
Okay.
right. Get on studio.wesley. Comment on our stories. Comment on our posts. DM us if you think we're stupid or if you think we're smart. And tell us what you think. All right. Bye.